My people, draw your stool closer. Not that far, come, because what I am about to tell you is not the kind of story you hear with half an ear while your mind is somewhere else. This one will enter your chest and sit there. It happened right here among us, in the kind of town where a man can sneeze in his bedroom and 3 women will discuss it at the borehole before he reaches for his handkerchief. The woman at the center of this matter was called Ngozi. Not any Ngozi, the Ngozi. The one whose entrance into any gathering caused a ripple, the way a stone dropped into still water sends rings to every corner. She wore a soke that looked like it was woven from the prayers of 10 tailors. Her jewelry didn't just catch the light, it argued with the sun and won. Every wrapper was a statement, every handbag was a verdict, and the verdict was always the same. I have arrived and you have not. Her husband was Engineer Obiora, a man whose name alone opened doors that other men had to knock on twice. He owned a filling station, a block of flats in the new part of town, and a confidence so thick you could slice it and serve it with soup. At every naming ceremony, every funeral, every community development meeting, Engineer Obiora sat at the front, and Ngozi sat beside him like a seal on an important document, present, official, unquestionable. The women would gather and marvel. See how she holds herself. See the way he provides. That is a real marriage, not like these small unions people are doing nowadays. But my people, the things we see are often just the front door of a house. What lives in the back rooms, only those inside can tell you. Behind that compound wall with the expensive paint that never seemed to fade, Ngozi was a woman walking on glass every single day. Engineer Obiora had a particular gift, the gift of making a person feel invisible while standing directly in front of him. He didn't shout. Shouting would have been easier because at least you can point to a raised voice and say, "See, this man is hurting me." No. Engineer Obiora spoke in the quiet, devastating tone of a man who had already decided you are beneath his full attention. "Your lucky women in this town don't know what you looked like before I married you," he would say, eyes still on his phone. They would not believe it. I took a girl with nothing and made her a topic of conversation. He said it so often and so calmly that Ngozi began to believe it the way you believe the weather, not because you chose to, but because it surrounds you completely. She stopped voicing opinions at dinner. She stopped disagreeing about anything larger than which cutting color to use. She learned to make herself small enough to fit inside the space he allowed her, and she called it being a good wife. On Sundays, she wore her finest and smiled her finest, and no one knew that the woman they envied had not made a single decision for herself in 4 years. Now, in every story like this, there is always a third character waiting in the wings. In this story, that character was Adeze. Adeze was what people called Ngozi's people person, always around, always available, always arriving with something in her hands. A plate of ofada rice here, a chilled bottle of malt there. Her mouth was full of sweetness and her eyes were full of calculation, and only one of those things was visible to Ngozi. "Ngo, this your sitting room, eh?" she would say, running her hand along the furniture. "The man that furnished this place has taste, real taste. Some of us are just managing in this life." She said it like a compliment. It was a reconnaissance. Because Adeze had looked at Ngozi's life the way a hungry person looks through a restaurant window, seeing only the plates, not the bill. She had decided, quietly and deliberately, that Engineer Obiora's resources were being wasted on a woman who didn't seem grateful enough, excited enough, worshipful enough. She, Adeze, would do better. She would appreciate it more. So she began positioning herself the way a chess piece moves, slowly, deliberately, one square at a time. She started visiting when she knew Ngozi had her trade association meetings. She started laughing a little louder at the engineer's jokes. She started saying things like, "A man of your standing deserves a woman who matches your energy." and Engineer Obiora, whose ego required daily feeding the way a generator requires fuel, began to look forward to her visits. The day Ngozi found out did not arrive with thunder or ceremony. It came on an ordinary Tuesday. She had returned early from a meeting that ended before schedule, and she heard them in the parlor, not doing anything dramatic, just talking. But it was the texture of the talking that stopped her feet. It was the easy laughter, the unguided looseness of two people who had forgotten to perform. She heard Adeze say, "She doesn't even see you properly. Some women don't know what they're holding." And she heard her husband reply, "You understand things she never will." Ngozi stood in the corridor, and something happened in her body that she had no word for. It was not quite pain. It was more like a key turning in a lock she hadn't known was there, a door swinging open inside her chest. She did not walk in. She walked back out quietly, sat in her car and stared at the steering wheel for a long time. And what came to her, slowly like light filling a room at dawn, was not rage. It was recognition. She recognized that she had been so consumed with protecting the image of her life that she had abandoned the real life. She had been guarding a performance while the real Ngozi, the one with opinions, with laughter, with a mind full of ideas she'd stopped sharing, had slowly packed herself into a corner and crouched there, waiting. She sat in that car and made a decision, not an angry decision, a clear one. From that day, Ngozi became very busy with things that had nothing to do with the house. She reached out to her cousin who ran a catering business in the next state, a cousin she had drifted away from because Engineer Obiora thought the woman was rough around the edges. The cousin was thrilled to hear from her. "Ngo, I have been waiting for you. You have talent. Come." She began attending a women's cooperative quietly, telling no one in the house. She brought nothing of value home from those meetings. No gossip, no drama, only knowledge, contacts, and a growing sense of what she was capable of. She let Adeze's visits increase. She even encouraged them in her careful way. "Adeze, my husband was asking if anyone could help him with the decorations for that client dinner. You have an eye for these things." Adeze would rush over, glowing with purpose. She thought she was getting closer. She had no idea she was being handed a key to a door Ngozi was already walking away from. The compound began to belong to Adeze in small ways that Ngozi quietly permitted. And all the while, Ngozi was sewing her parachute stitch by quiet stitch. On the morning she left, she did something that confused everyone later when they heard the story. She cooked. She woke before dawn, made a full pot of ofe onugu the way Engineer Obiora liked it, the way she had spent 3 years perfecting to his exact taste, and left it on the cooker. Then she bathed, dressed simply, took a bag with documents, a small amount of cash, and her mother's Bible. She went to the parlor. Engineer Obiora was at the table, scrolling through his phone as usual, a cup of tea beside him. He looked up. "I'm going," she said. Not loudly, not dramatically, the way you announce something that has already happened. He looked at her the way powerful people look at things they believe are incapable of surprising them. "Going where exactly?" "Away from here." He set his phone down then. "Ngozi, have you lost your senses? Do you know what you have in this house? Do you know what you are about to throw away?" She looked at him for a moment, really looked, the way you look at a place you are leaving for the last time, trying to fix it in memory. "I know exactly what I'm leaving," she said. "I spent 4 years in it." "You will come back," he said, and there was no warmth in it, only certainty, the certainty of a man who has never been left. "Where will you go? What will you do? Who are you without this?" She picked up her bag. "I'm going to find out," she said, and she opened the door and walked through it. She almost collided with Adayeze on the steps. Adayeze was dressed with great care, too much care for a casual visit, and she was carrying a flask that smelled like fresh pepper soup. Her eyes went from the bag in Ngozi's hand to Ngozi's face, reading the situation with the speed of a woman who had been waiting for exactly this moment. A smile moved across Adayeze's face, victorious, inevitable. "So you are going," she said, not unkindly, but not kindly either. Ngozi looked at her. This woman who had sat at her table, eating her food, called her sister while dismantling everything behind her back. She searched herself for bitterness and found, to her own surprise, very little. "Yes," she said, "the soup is on the fire. He likes it with 2 pieces of stockfish, not 1. Don't forget that. The generator has a button you have to hold for 3 seconds, not 2. And he doesn't like anyone talking while he watches the evening news." She paused. "Welcome home, Adayeze." She walked down the steps and through the gate. Behind her, she heard the flask Adayeze was carrying shift, the small sound of a person whose confidence had been punctured by something they couldn't name. My people, I will not deceive you and say it was easy. The first months were the kind of hard that has no name. Ngozi slept on a narrow mattress in her spare cousin's room and lay awake some nights wondering if she had made the right choice. The town talked. Of course the town talked. Did you hear Ngozi left the engineer? Just like that. The woman must have something wrong with her head. Some people called her proud. Some called her foolish. One auntie, God bless her, called her brave. She held on to that one word like a lantern in a long corridor. She threw herself into her cousin's catering business with everything she had, and it turned out that Ngozi, freed from the performance of being Engineer Biora's wife, had reserves of energy and creativity that she had not accessed in years. Within 8 months, they had expanded. Within a year and a half, she had registered her own line, catering specifically to corporate events. Her name was on a signboard, her own name, not attached to anyone else's. She laughed differently now, louder and without calculating whether it was appropriate. She made decisions, big ones, small ones, and bore the consequences of them herself. And even when she was wrong, there was a dignity in owning your own mistakes that she had not known before. And Adayeze, my people, when the mask comes off a man, it does not come off gently. Engineer Obiora, with no respectable wife beside him, no one to make his household stable and well managed, began to show Adayeze the version of himself that Ngozi had quietly absorbed for years. The criticism came first, small, almost reasonable. Then it grew teeth. This soup is not how it should be. Ngozi did it better. The comparison was its own cruelty. Adayeze had moved into the house thinking she was stepping into a palace. What she found was that the palace required enormous invisible labor, and the king did not say thank you. What she found was that the sweetness he had shown her during the pursuit was a strategy, not a character. What she found was that she had not stolen a good life. She had signed a contract written in invisible ink, and now she was reading the terms. The women who had whispered about Ngozi now whispered about Adayeze, but with a different tone. Less envy, more pity. Then more judgment. Then the particular silence that falls over a community when someone has gotten exactly what they asked for. The day their paths crossed again was at the big market, the kind of busy Saturday where everyone in town eventually passes through. Ngozi was at a store negotiating prices for an event order, her phone against the ear, her notebook open, her attention fully in the world she had built. She heard her name and turned. Adayeze stood a few feet away. She had lost the particular brightness that envy gives a person, that fierce, energized glow of wanting. In its place was something flatter, older. She looked like a woman who had learned something expensive. Their eyes held each other for a moment. Adayeze opened her mouth. Ngozi could see the words forming, something that might have been an apology, or a question, or a plea for the kind of wisdom that only comes from having already survived the lesson. Ngozi nodded, once, gently, then she turned back to her phone call. Not because she was hard, but because some understanding has to arrive the long way through a person's own living, and no shortcut exists. My people, I have laid the story at your feet. Now, let me add what it means. Before you look at another person's position and feel the pull of wanting it, pause. Ask yourself the question Adayeze never thought to ask. What is this person not saying about this place? Because a woman who has options fights for her seat. A woman who is quietly gathering herself for departure, she lets you sit down without resistance. And that lack of resistance is not weakness. It is a woman who has already seen what you are still trying to reach. Not every house that looks like a blessing has blessing living inside it. Some are beautifully painted traps, and the person walking out of them is not the one in crisis. And let this also sit with you. No man, no house, no title is worth the daily surrender of the self. Ngozi's keys in a small rented room was worth more than all the gold she left behind. What you build with your own hands, however modest, has a dignity that borrowed luxury can never provide. My people, I have said my own. May you never envy a cage because of the quality of its bars. May you always look for the door before you admire the furnishings. And may the life you choose be one you actually want to live, not one that looks good from the outside while hollowing you out from within. Go well.